distributors and from the Chamber of Commerce representing businesses in general. Observers certainly have been able to note that this year's budget process was very difficult. As a participant in the process, I can verify that the budget process was very difficult this year in Albany. But I've always maintained that I am not in love with our budget. Oftentimes you have to take the good, or at least the tolerable, with the bad. But in the case of the floor tax on wine and beer, I just cannot take this bad part of the budget. The excise tax that the Assembly and the Senate and the Governor's Office agreed to raise on wine and liquor was one of those revenue raisers that we felt was something we needed to do. It hadn't been raised in many years, and that we could justify raising a tax. That essentially was a little bit outdated. We reduced the excise tax that the governor proposed significantly in the final budget to reflect that we didn't feel we should really be hitting our small businesses as hard as what the governor initially proposed. But somehow the excise tax has spun into a floor tax. And as early as the middle of April, just after the budget was signed, I began looking into this issue in response to communications I've been receiving from the industry. And what I have been told is that whenever the state raises an excise tax, just a standard operating procedure, they also build in a floor tax, which is how this floor tax came to be. It wasn't discussed during budget deliberations. It wasn't anything that industry members had on their radar. It just appeared in the bill. And it mirrors the excise tax increase, exactly on wine and beer. So it's something that just got slipped in there, and now our small businesses are looking at the consequences, which can mean from a few $100s to several $1,000s, depending on the size of your operation. This floor tax is something that our small businesses cannot afford. It's something that I will not tolerate. That's why I have introduced this bill to get rid of the floor tax, which has to be paid by July 20th of this year. This is the right thing to do, and I think that that's something that every legislator should do. If we have the opportunity to right a wrong before the wrong is inflicted on people who are just out there trying to run a good business and to provide a good service, I think we should take that opportunity, and it would be irresponsible if we did not. So I'm very thankful that I have the support of all the businesses behind me. This law has led to reduced sales, 20% reduction in sales in some instances. It's created a domino effect. I believe that it particularly hurts our fledgling wineries in this area, because purchases that would have been made from the wineries were not made in anticipation of having to take an inventory at the end of April and then pay taxes on it. And so the wineries not only lost their sale, but they also have to pay tax on the increased volume that they weren't able to move off of their floor. Not to mention the fact that they're not only producers that are being taxed on their inventory, but oftentimes they're retailers who are also going to be taxed on what they had on the floor that they weren't able to move as well. It's just been a domino effect from distributors to bar owners, and it's inherently unfair. These businesses are essentially being taxed twice with the excise tax and the floor tax, and it's something that I am willing to fight during the last few weeks of session to get changed before the deadline when these business owners have to pay the tax. I'm also circulating petitions within the community to show the overwhelming support and to say, emphatically to Albany that this is not how we need to be operating. You can pick them up at many of the establishments that are affected, but you can also pick them up from one of my district offices, or you can get it off the internet. So I'll give a couple of minutes if anyone behind me would like to make some comments as well. Or did I sum it up? So, any questions?
I have actually a question for John. John, you had mentioned in a prior press release that you thought a lot of people wouldn't be aware of this law. Maybe to all of you, what kind of notification notification have you gotten from taxation and finance that this tax is due and when you have to pay it and how you have to pay it?
I got absolutely none. I don't know what the rest of them.
Didn't get anything. We had to do the research, make the calls ourselves.
I had to call Senator's Assembly office to get off the internet site where to go for the form. When I got that on May 2nd for an inventory was due May 1st.
At the chamber, we get a lot of notifications, so we can send them out to members, and we got nothing. So,
I believe that industry organizations were the first to realize it, and they would have been the only ones trying to get the word out. You know, so if an association was really the first group that picked up on it on that side.
Assemblywoman, obviously you're working up against a pretty tight deadline right now. What kind of support are you getting in Albany, and how do you get this change done in the next several weeks of session?
Well, I believe I'm getting pretty good support in Albany. We do have several weeks of session left. It's not unheard of to make adjustments to the budget before the end of session, and I am very hopeful and optimistic that we'll be able to address this issue before the end of session.
How do you balance this out? Obviously, the floor tax is something that the bar owners are seeing as unfair to them, but it's part of the revenue that the state has now built into the budget. How big of a chunk do we lose from the floor tax? And
it's not easy to get a definitive figure, but it will likely be to the state less than $1 million, which in a $132 billion budget is a very small fraction. And so, I believe that we can absorb that. I also believe we're going to have to come back and address revenue shortfalls for this year anyway, and that this shortfall can be addressed at that time as well. Okay. Did you want to ask anything not germane to the floor tax?
okay, maybe if we could talk to some of you.
Yeah, I'll just
for that.
Okay.
Great. Thank you so much.